NTU World of Wisdom. Welcome to High Impact Thesis. In this podcast, we speak with researchers from various scientific fields to talk about the motivation, goal, and potential impact of their research. We also want to give you a sense of how a Ph.D. is carried out with an emphasis on the PH, the philosophical aspects involved in pursuing a Ph.D.
Welcome everybody. Today we have a conversation with Rishabh Gupta, Ph.D. student in Tripoli NTU. Welcome, Rishabh.
Thanks, Ahmed, for having me. Thank you all.
All right. So, as we, talked in the email, we divide the episode into 4 sections, right? So first we talk about your area and, why did you get into it and what is it about? And then we move on to your day-to-day activities and like your thinking process, your, problem-solving activities and all. And then we talk about the future of the area you're working on, like where's it going, what are the major challenges, and are there like any recent breakthroughs? And then finally we touch on your personal life, personal interests, and all that. So to get this started, can you tell us about your work, your research?
Okay, so first of all, as you said, I'm a PhD student in Tripoli. I'm a 4th-year student. So my research interests are mainly aligned towards spatial audio and psychoacoustics. Those are 2 keywords, so let me explain what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
So spatial audio basically means rendering sound as we hear in natural surroundings, along with the spatial properties that these sound sources might have. So you might have heard of the Apple AirPods, right?
Mm-hmm.
The newest AirPods Pro has a feature which has been maybe 2 months ago it was launched, where you have a spatial audio feature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course this has been a subject area of research since the last 20 years. Now we are seeing commercial applications such as the popular ones such as AirPods Pro.
Mm-hmm.
There have been others in the past where several startups have tried to develop a certain set of headphone constructions which could support spatial audio and stuff like that. But we can get to that, but that's basically a nutshell. So spatial sound is one area of focus. Another is psychoacoustics. So psychoacoustics essentially means study of how humans perceive sound, right? So 2 words, psychoacoustics. So it's not how psychos perceive sound, it's psychology of the acoustics. Right. So that's the second area of focus. So my research interest is basically trying to study how humans perceive sound and then design algorithms which can model that perception.
I see. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned one application, which is like the AirPods, right, that Apple produced. But are there any other application that your research touches on?
Absolutely. So, AirPods is just the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So my research work is actually applied, primarily developed for augmented reality. So first of all, again, let me clarify what that means for the people who are not aware. So augmented reality, virtual reality, all different kinds of alternate realities that have become is basically a medium in which you feel as if you are immersed in an alternate digital sort of surrounding. Right? Then you go to what's the difference, right? Why call it by different names, right? So augmented reality and virtual reality are the 2 more popular ones that we have right now. We have extended reality and stuff, and mixed reality. These are just, even the definitions are not standardized yet. But for this discussion, maybe we can just touch upon these 2 basic ones. So virtual reality. Virtual reality means you are only perceiving the virtual world. So you only have the digital virtual reality, which you are seeing. So you're cut off from the real. So this is more popular. You might have seen like people playing games on it or watching movies and stuff.
Right, the Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah. So Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, all the VR gears that you have in the market right now, mostly concentrating on virtual reality. Now the augmented reality part is a bit more, not so much developed, and there are reports like several companies are working on it in secret. But the thing is, like, it's basically a rendition of the digital world overlapped with the real world, right? So I think good visualization was shown in Iron Man, where he was able to see the real display and the virtual display, right? Now with the display, it's very clear, like you can have a sort of overlay, you can interact with the objects, right? If you take the same concept in the audio sense, you can again have overlay of real and virtual objects, and you could have interactions, right? That's where the mixed and extended reality come into play. So for example, if I were to bounce a ball on this table, a virtual reality would only see the ball, right? An augmented reality scenario would see the ball and the table, and I would hear maybe a sound from this room if you were to speak, and the ball. And now extended reality or mixed reality could have you catch the, like, he interact with the sound of the ball, maybe throw another ball which interacts with the sound, right? Maybe catch the ball which I could hear. So this is just transcending the realm of digital reality and trying to make it as real in real life as possible.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of these features we have on some headphones and earphones, the pass-through feature, right? Where it passes the audio from the surrounding into the headphones and back to you, but it's not exactly, it's reconstructed somehow, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. That's my thesis focus, so as to speak.
Okay.
So that's the, it's a big problem. Augmented reality audio is a big problem. So I'm focusing on the pass-through function. So definitely we can talk about it more. But essentially you are right. They are trying to reconstruct the real environment by capturing the information through the set of microphones, which are usually present, like this headphone right here. For those of you who can't see, it's just a normal headphone, but it has microphones outside, so it's just capturing all the surrounding information, replaying it back for you. But of course, then we come into the nuance part, then some of the spatial characteristics or some of the spectral changes might be lost.
Okay, so you mentioned you focus on two main things, right? Spatial audio and psychoacoustics. So what's like, if you want to explain psychoacoustic, I mean, not what it is, but like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do the analysis?
Okay, so there's of course there's empirical data that we collect on human subjects. So let's say we play different kind of soundtracks on a set of people and then do a randomized trial sort of thing. So I will give you a set of soundtracks to evaluate. You will evaluate how you feel, like how similar is it to a reference or stuff like that. So we have different paradigms, different testing paradigms which have been developed. And then we based on the mean scores, we try to see what, let's say what algorithm, if I'm working on an algorithm, or what technique works best. Or sometimes it's even the audio quality test, where basically you are testing the fidelity of a device. So there are paradigms, and there are ISO standards and ANSI standards for all these things. So we follow those guidelines, ITU standards, and we follow those guidelines, set up an experiment, and try to gather data. Another is also the objective models. So we have some sort of objective models which can give a sort of approximate scores of how people might perceive. So we know what cues are important, and then we can derive some scores based on.
Okay, let's take a step back. So why did you even get into all this? Like,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a funny story. So basically, my background is a bit funny as well. So I'm from India. So I went to a college in India called BITS Pilani. And it's a kind of unique college in the sense that it allows you to do a dual degree program. And I was in the dual degree program where, so you can essentially take a sciences degree and a bachelor's degree in 5 years. And so you have to do, of course, double the course load, but you can do it. If you survive, you get 2 degrees by the end of it.
All right.
So I took, the funny thing is you take a sciences degree first because they want to promote science. Not a lot of people take science as the major. Usually people go for engineering. So that's the motivation behind that. So they want you to enter with a science degree. So I took chemistry because I just loved chemistry. And back in high school. And then after my first year, I was like, I want to take electrical and electronics, and then of course it made no sense to link those two. But I enjoyed both subjects, and then I took an internship because I wanted to get some real world experience, like a approximation of a job, right? So internship was a good way to do that. So I landed up in Bangalore, which is a city in India, which is like the Silicon Valley of India. So yeah, a lot of tech around, and
so this was related to your Triple-E degree.
Not exactly. I mean, it was still signal processing, which is a part of a Triple-E curriculum, but it's nothing that I learned in the degree per se.
Okay.
So audio is very different in the sense that it will combine different elements, and you could definitely go deep into one subject. So if I wasn't doing much hardware per se also for audio.
But was it like a requirement for the degree to do the internship, or you just...
No, so you can do a degree, internship or a thesis. And funny story is like I was like, I'm not doing a thesis. Sometimes life has other plans, but yeah. I went for internship because I was really curious to try hands-on something in a real problem setting. So that's how I found audio. So that project involved audio.
I see. So that's where things started.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before that, I had no clue about audio. And when I actually told my chemistry teacher, like whom I was doing projects under, I did 3 projects under her, I published 3 papers, and she was like, see, you're going for further studies in chemistry, right? And I was like, sorry to disappoint you. So I mean, totally by accident, I found this. Yeah.
So you already had an exposure to audio and acoustics before you start your PhD.
Yes.
You had some exposure.
Yes. Yeah, 1 year in Bangalore, I was doing basically experiments, so as to speak, and some research work. I mean, it wasn't research. It was more like, company exploration sort of thing, which happens when you have an intern, right? Like, let's give this intern some problem that nobody knows how to solve. Let's just see what he does with it.
Interesting.
So I was working with a senior member who was actually a Ph.D. He was a very experienced guy, and we were just 2 people racking our brains about a problem, trying to get maximum output of a small speaker. These are called micro speakers in your phone or laptops, and we were trying to model their behavior. So I mean, that got interested me also in audio as well as the research process in audio. Then I also had 1 year experience here in the same research lab. Yeah.
So when it comes to you just mentioned augmented reality. So spatial audio, how does it take part or be part of designing the experience for augmented reality?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. So like George Lucas said, sound is half the experience of a motion picture, right? And I guess he's sort of the guru on that. So sound is really important and often ignored in augmented reality or in any digital experience, right? The innovations usually follow vision, right? People are more focused on the visual aspect. But what people are realizing now, at least, is that sound is a very powerful medium to convey important information, to grab attention, right? For example, warning signals, right? Alarms, they grab our attention, right? Sound is 360 degree, so you can hear in any area of the room
direction.
But you can't see at the back of your head, right? So it's a very powerful sense. Now for augmented reality, it's twofold. I see it as twofold, right? One is of course immersion. You want to engage as many senses as possible. So you got vision, you got haptics, you got audio. Still don't know how to do smell and taste. Maybe it's coming later. There's some interesting papers, but nobody has tangible products about it yet. So trying to engage as many senses as possible. Sound plays a very important role. Spatial audio is very similar to the natural spatial experience. So that's where you feel that it can actually be real, right? Problem with these products is the immersion is still a problem. There's a mismatch, right?
But usually it's approached differently when you are trying to design the sound system for augmented reality and for virtual reality. Because for virtual, you don't have any sense of what's happening around you.
Exactly.
But in the case of augmented reality, you have more
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have a
audio.
real reference,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So I talked about the perceptual paradigms earlier. So you have a real source to compare,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I could have avatars of you guys in an augmented reality setting, and you guys would be speaking, and I would, if there's a mismatch, my brain would be like, no, that's not real. Right?
Yeah, correct.
But in virtual, you could render anybody in maybe an approximate way in audio or vision, and your brain would just sort of fill the gaps. So very good example is like a movie theater or a home theater where you often see the speakers are here, right? Like displaced from the position of the vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
But your brain actually
Still,
your
still.
brain actually does what's called a ventriculist effect. So it places the audio there. So you sometimes forget that the speaker is here, right? So there's all sorts of perceptual effects which are very interesting, which happen when we have real sounds.
I'm interested also about this, like the three-dimensional sound experience that's sometimes created in, like, I wonder how is it by using a single speaker on your ear you could create this effect, like the sounds coming from different directions, and how is it possible?
Yeah, that's again a good question.
It's like the same speaker on the same spot. How does it create this effect?
That's a good question to ask. And the answer is, it's because if you go a bit on the physics side, what is sound, right? It's just pressure,
waves,
right?
Pressure.
It's just pressure waves.
Yes.
So ideally, in theory, if you can create the same pressure wave that you have in a real surrounding through a speaker, through anything, it's the same experience, right? Your brain interprets the differences in sound pressure. It doesn't interpret sound seen as such, right? Of course, it's taking a lot of information with the sound waves in addition to it to make sense of the world around you. But if just talking from pure sonic perspective, you just need the right sound pressure. That's why you can deliver whatever experience you want just by delivering the right sound pressure through the set of headphones.
Right, and that's what they're doing with these Apple AirPods and
Yes.
what's the new headphone called?
The Max.
AirPod Max, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it has a soundstage.
There are different
feature.
components to it actually. So we, I could talk a bit if you guys like
Yeah, of course.
about so psychoacoustics you mentioned. We know a bit in detail about what cues, what psychoacoustic cues are important for spatial listening, right? So one is the time delay. So how we are able to spot the direction is basically time and level differences. If it's on the same, the same plane as my 2 ears, right? So, but if it's like elevated, then I need all the diffraction patterns basically, or all the radiation patterns from my ear. So my outer ear or your outer ear, everybody's outer ear, mine is not unique, generates a unique radiation pattern, sound radiation pattern. So when sound collides with your outer ear, it produces differences in pressure in high frequencies, because that's where the ear shape or whatever, the small protrusions or changes in ear shape, anthropometric features we call it, are different, like they are comparable to the wavelength of sound in high frequencies. So that's when you have all these subtle changes occurring in sources which are basically, so these differences are more pronounced in, of course, any sound direction, but we use more of it for the elevated sources, which are basically not in the plane but up and down, front, back, and also we use sometimes head rotation. Not so much in, we don't realize we are using it, but sometimes our brain just makes slight head movements to basically distinguish, for example, front and back, right?
Right, yeah.
Oh,
You can also notice with some animals, like some cats, for example.
Yeah.
They change the shape of their ear, right, to distinguish the.
Yeah, I mostly study humans. But,
but I'm familiar with this. Like you need to do some physical adjustment to interpret the sound.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're changing is actually the time delays. What usually happens is you're changing those cues to help your brain to locate, okay, whether it's front, back. Maybe you're having two same cues. Right. So your brain says, okay, it's front because when I move it, it's here, right? And the more interesting part is all these behaviors I've learned. Nobody taught these.
Right. I was just going to say, this is just, you intuitively just do these adjustments. But yeah, so you're also studying those behaviors.
So the thing is, I talked about basically using psychoacoustics into programming algorithms. So we have knowledge of these cues, and I have studied further through my experiments, and then try to derive how I can model these. So it's sort of like a model of how somebody will hear in certain scenario, and then I plug it in, and then it generates left and right sound pressures, right? That's what we talked about. That's how we get the experience.
So are there any like fundamental differences between how people generally perceive sound, or is it homogeneous across like the entire population?
I think that's a question we don't know the answer to, of course, because it's a very active area of research. There are some differences. There are some similarities that we know about for sure, that have been well documented in literature, right? Like the stuff I was talking about before about the time delays, about the spectral cues. Those are well documented. Several studies have proven those effects over the years. But some things we are still figuring out.
So when it comes to psychoacoustics, are there any applications in sound compression, or like after you record an audio, for example, you remove certain features which are inaudible for humans?
Yeah, certainly. So that's how MP3 was born. What happens in MP3 is you remove all the inaudible frequencies, and they compute basically a masking curve. So yeah, we can go into that detail, but if you want, but the basic fundamental is what you just described. So we remove all the inaudible frequencies that your brain cannot hear, that your brain cannot process for some reason. You can still hear. But yeah, so you remove, so it's a lossy encoding, right? And this is coding is one very good example. It is perhaps the oldest example, which has used a lot of psychoacoustic development, which has propelled that, because its bitrate was, as you all know, like bandwidth and bitrate is money.
It's
right?
quite important,
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave us a good idea now about the general background about your research area. So I'd like to move now to your own research, what you are trying to achieve with your research, what's the challenge or research problem you are trying to address with your work here at NTU. So if you could speak a bit about that.
So as I said, my research is actually about the pass-through function, or we call it acoustic transparency. So basically, one is the virtual aspect of sound, right, for AR. Another is the real aspect, right? So when you have real headphones put on your ears, they block sound in certain frequencies, and this varies based on the construction of the headphones, the fit of the headphone, the ear, your ear shape, like the multitude of factors, right? So I'm trying to investigate how basically to reproduce sound as it is in the real environment over a pair of headphones, right, before you can overlay virtual sound on it. So virtual sound, again, the investigation, at least in research, has been going around for quite some time. We have good solutions for the particular set of problems, and now you are seeing commercial applications of it. But what I'm trying to see is there's still this problem of the real sound being played back as is, right, with all the spatial properties. So that's still area of research which is open, and that's why I'm trying to fill some of the gaps that are there.
Right. So something I personally notice is that when you're using these features, right, it's your sense of space isn't the same. Like, is when you take off the headphone, you can easily identify where's the, like, let's say a car, where's it coming from, or where's the person is speaking from. But with the headphones on, that sense is, I feel like it's a bit attenuated. Like, it becomes more difficult to
exactly. So imagine you have like a critical situation, right? You're crossing the road, you want to hear where the traffic's coming from, or you're talking to somebody and you want to hear their story, and you have these headphones on and you still want to retain the sort of spatial perception, right? Now it becomes critical, because you want the same direction, right? Your brain can do some of the correct some of the mismatch, right? Because you I can see your visual.
Exactly, yeah.
So your brain won't be like, yeah, he's talking from behind, right? That's not gonna happen, right? Unless you have some other sort of medical issue which I'm not aware. But generally speaking, you'll be able to make that out. But what happens when you can't augment other senses with it? Like you're relying on your audio as the primary sense, right? This becomes critical. Also, yeah, as you said, the sound is attenuated, and not just attenuated. I have shown in my research papers that even the directions are like all going here and there. Right. Because it's a delicate balance how the headphones or whatever earphones you're using are situated on the ear. So I talked about the diffraction pattern created by your ear, the delays, right? They need to be exact for your brain to exactly locate the sound source. It can correct some mismatch, but it can't correct too much, right? So that's where the nuances of the research.
Right. So I would imagine so it's not just about recording the environment. It's also the placing of the mics and the quality of the mics as well, right? Like
definitely
how they pick up the sound.
Yeah, definitely. So imagine it's like a complex system which has a number of components. You have to capture the outside sound, but after that begins the real work, right? So you have to capture the cues that I was talking about. You have to capture the information of the environment, and then you have to sort of model the individual preferences, and then you have to generate the signals, right? So it's sort of like this whole framework, and any error in the chain, in the processing chain, can lead to a gap in perception, right?
Yeah.
So that's why this problem is a bit complex, because like funnily enough, your brain is very good at detecting certain changes and not very good at detecting others. So in some areas we have to be really careful.
Okay. So what are the sort of tools that you're working with, the equipment and the software that is like used in this area?
So, of course, I think you probably might have guessed, like speakers and microphones are the staples.
Right,
Yeah.
the backbone.
Yeah. Then you have sound cards, which are hardware, which we use to record and play sounds. And then we have, of course, everybody needs a processing system. So either it's a laptop or a specialized, like a signal processing board, like DSP chip, or even sometimes we have used like off-the-shelf Raspberry Pi or like ARM board.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so some sort of embedded platform. So basically a processing platform. And of course, either that comes with the processing platform or we attach to it as like we have always the analog to digital and digital to analog, right? To capture and playback, right? So I think that's sort of the basic signal processing chain, basic hardware. As for the software, of course, now MATLAB is quite powerful for doing basic recording, playback, and algorithms as well, trying out prototyping. We use LabVIEW. What else? Of course, C and assembly for programming the DSPs. And yeah, I think those are the ones which get used more.
And in terms of the data that you collect, do you only work with your own generated data, or do you also rely on some database?
So there's good databases online also. Of course, for my problem, it's a bit... So we have a headphone prototype that I'm working with. So that data is specific to that prototype. But in general, like people's measurements, subjective measurements, and their other like information about their ear shape and all that has been made online by a lot of good people. And we have dense data sets of like every 5 degrees, in some cases even 1 degree resolution of HRTF measurement, and we call them HRTF. So HRTF is basically like the free field measurement of a user's response, right? So if you think, to simplify, if you have a sound source, a single sound source, and if you place a microphone at your eardrum, exactly at your eardrum, and you record the transmission path, so the encoding information in a free field setting, we call it will be what is your head related transfer function, or HRT.
Right.
Yeah. So people have made this database for different people. organized by different parameters, demographics, gender, whatever, ear shapes, ear sizes, whatever, also online.
So I've seen this interesting company. I unfortunately don't remember the name, but they released this headphone. Maybe you recognize them. It's the headphone with the that's playing. It's playing the. So it's a headphone and an earphone at the same time. So
Nuhera?
Nuhera, yeah. So
Okay.
so sorry. What's the name?
Nuhera. Nuhera.
Nuhera.
Nuhera.
Okay. So they had an interesting feature in their app where the app where you put on the headphone and it will start analyzing your ear somehow. It will analyze your response, your ear response.
Yeah.
So is that also something that you're looking into, or
Yeah, I
is that
mean,
different?
so there's different ways of characterizing your ear response, right? So I'm guessing, I'm not sure what their patent is, no idea, but I'm guessing how somebody might go about doing that is basically, so your ear canal length also makes a difference, although it's a standard, like it can be a standard function, like we just need to know the length and we can tweak the response, the HRTF I talked about. So what's a more interesting problem, in the sense a more difficult problem to solve, is to model as I talked about, the sound path from the sound
From the
source
source, right?
to
Eardrums.
the ear canal.
Oh.
So it's like the eardrum is the end point, right, where the sensor is, your brain sensor is, so as to speak. And then before that is the ear canal entrance. So the function is like sound source to ear canal plus ear canal to eardrum is equal to sound source to eardrum, right? So it can be broken down like that. So what they're doing is they're modeling the second part. So they're modeling the ear canal to ear canal to eardrum, so as to speak. They're estimating it.
Okay.
It can be useful because if you somehow model the other features, like you have some sort of database, whatever, I don't know what they have. They never revealed. So, but they are, I think they play a tune to estimate your ear canal length and your hearing profile. So as Mohammed pointed out, that you may not be able to hear certain frequencies.
Yeah.
Yes. So
we all lose it.
right
as we go.
As we go.
age, yeah.
Yeah, so they might be detecting that and saying, okay, you can't hear 12 kilohertz above anyway, so let me not play that and save some battery life. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, are there any differences between the left and right ear in the perception? Because I noticed most of the earphones are labeled left and right.
Yeah.
And if you try to switch them around, like it sounds different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is going back, but let me rewind a bit, right? So you use 2 ears to listen, right? Now, a question is, what happens if you use 1 ear, right? Can you still hear spatially, right?
Not sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So no, it's an open question. It's still an open question. So we know what we lose when we lose 1 ear, but we still don't know like what is the extent of that loss.
Okay.
So we have monaural studies which basically take in one thing into account, like people just doing 1 ear and doing the test and another ear and doing the test, but it's like what's the actual perception, right? What's the, because you can have then two people do, like people do it binaurally, but then what's the actual difference? Because there's so many soundtracks, so many conditions, like you can't test for everything. Right? But we do know in terms of cues that you do lose certain cues. So like the time delay, the level difference, which is basically used to localize in the horizontal plane, right? That uses 2 ears, right? If you just have one, you don't have any reference to compare to. So that's left and right, right? So your brain will be like, oh, like where is it? Right.
Okay.
So if you switch, so what's happening in your usual headphone is it's a stereo configuration, right?
Yeah.
So stereo means two speakers at 30 degrees, plus minus 30, right? If your head is at 0, it's plus minus 30. So 30 clockwise, 30 anti-clockwise, 2 speakers, right? And you're in the center. So we call it the sweet spot.
The sweet spot.
Yeah. So if you flip left and right, easy answer. TLDR version is you basically change the information, and sometimes what may lead is like this, we call it the sound image will be distorted, And why that happens is a bit more technical. But because, I mean, a hint is in the cues, right? Again.
So it has nothing to do with the sensitivity of the ears. Like, it's primarily a directional.
Yeah, but it could be. So, for example, most people lose hearing in one ear, or one or the other ear. If you have that condition, it can aggravate that loss of sound image. Right?
Okay.
So it can lead to further imbalances. I was telling from assuming two identical ears.
All right. So you work here in NTU, I assume.
Yeah.
Which lab is that?
So it's Digital Signal Processing Lab.
Oh, it's just called digital signal processing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so what does your daily activity look like? So
Okay,
go
so
there and-
now it's, after COVID is a bit different than before COVID. So now it's mostly simulations. So I'm trying to basically simulate a lot of acoustic scenarios and see what algorithms work best. And before COVID, I was doing a lot more experimentation and all that that I described, like the psychoacoustics part. Now it's more the modeling and simulation. So whatever data I have, I'm trying to fit it into models and see how I can extract useful information.
Okay.
So yeah, my day-to-day looks like not different from any other PhD student, I guess. I go to the lab. If I'm doing some simulations, I do that. If I'm whatever experiment or measurement or whatever I'm doing that, then I do that. And yeah, that's it. Like that's the work day. I mean.
Okay. So you gave us a good idea, I think, by now about your own research and what you are trying to address with your research. So would like you to give us some general idea about the outlook of this research area, acoustics in general. What are maybe perhaps the open questions or the main goals that people are trying to figure out in this area, like in the long term?
Yeah, the funny thing is the long term in consumer industry is shorter than most industries, right? Like if you ask like a biomedical company, they plan for 30 years. But consumer industry is like, okay, what's coming in the next 5 years, right?
Okay.
So let me give you that idea, right? So I think there's few unsolved problems still. Like, of course, in terms of perception, I feel like I don't know if we'll ever be able to map out how actually the brain perceives the multitude of like the soundscapes that we have, right? The sound around us, right? And that's one area definitely, right? So some people in our lab are also working towards why certain sounds make you feel pleasant, unpleasant, other emotions, right? That's one thing that's quite interesting. Another thing is augmented reality, audio. How, like, as I said, the perception is an ongoing field. I think the research will keep on going, but how much can we solve? So what's a good enough AR audio experience, right? Like, the earphone is not perfect, but it does the job. What's that for AR audio? Something in that vein maybe might come out in the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe some commercial interest or something, or even a research which proves fundamentally that it will work in different surroundings. Another thing is related to spatial sound. Although there has been numerous research for HRTFs also, I think this is also an unanswered problem. Like, what's a good HRTF, right?
Yeah.
So that is something very interesting and not very easy to calculate. I mean, we know 100% accurate works. We know like what's bad, right? Actually, the stereo is bad, let's say, right? I mean, in terms of spatial perception, that's the very basic, right? Stereo is very basic, the accurate, your own natural listening is the gold standard, ground truth. So where is there's a value of uncertainty, right? So what will make it believable, but still doable?
Okay.
So that's an interesting question. And you can extrapolate that to everything. You can extrapolate that to acoustic transparency, to all the audio experiences, right? So what the problem becomes then is basically at what point can your brain detect that the experience is broken, right? And how do you calculate that?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so these are all open questions.
Open questions.
Yeah, these are some of the open questions. There is a lot more nuance in there, but on a high level. And then there's one other interesting problem that I can talk about if you want me to, is related to...
Yeah, please.
Yeah, related to the auditory processing of the brain. So till now, it's like a more top-down approach, right? Where you have the audio signal, then you focus more on, as I said, delivering the right audio signal to the eardrum, and then you sort of assume that fine, your brain will take care of it rest. But what happens when the interplay is there? As I said, there's ventriculist effect when your visual is there, or something else might occur where your sound sense is not so heightened, right? Some physiological response. So I am very interested towards that also. It's like, so there has been some research, of course, studying the EEG based attention patterns and mapping that to the sound, basically which direction the sound is from and all that. So yeah, some of the areas that I'm interested in, because that's a more nascent area. That's more like, we still don't know much about the auditory processing aspect of the brain.
Now, I wanted to get to noise cancelling, but before we go into that, I wanted to ask you, do you think we're going to have a future where people buy headphones and earphones and sound systems based on their, like, like their own biology? Like, for example, right now we buy prescription specs, right? So you go and you do the test, and then you are prescribed a pair of glasses based on your own vision. So is that the future also of audio, consumer audio?
Certainly. So a word I forgot to mention is personalization, right? So all of which I'm talking about has to be personalized, right? Because we know that non-personalized, that is the current headphone in the market, is broken for certain experiences. So certainly what you described is possible, and actually the future is now. So we have Sony bringing out the Sony 360-degree reality, I think it's called. So it takes a foot off your ear and it's calculating all those functions that I talk about. So you can actually play some songs that are spatialized in certain sense and feel, as you said, talked about the lack of sense of space, it will give you that. So that is actually a direct consequence of not having the individualized functions measured, or estimated.
Yes.
So if you try that experience out, you'll feel some degree, not a lot, not still there, but some degree of externalization where you feel, okay, it's out there, it's not here.
So the hardware is still the same, it's just now a matter of personalizing from the software. From the software side, basically.
Yeah, as I said, all you need is two pair of signals, left and right, and it can be delivered through a speaker. All you need to get is the sound pressure right. Just manipulating that air pressure around your ear. Okay, now, like recently there was a news article, I think, about your research group and the work that your group does on noise cancelling. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Sure. So I'm not maybe the qualified person to speak on that because I'm not from that group. But let me just give you a brief idea of the problem statement. So the problem statement is what that group, the active noise cancellation group, is working at is basically how to block sounds through open windows. So like, for example, and this was part of a challenge by ministry, ministry.
So there was like an interest. It was interest into this problem.
And then we had a project. So this was a part of the project that you ultimately led to a solution and then the publicity later. So basically, the problem is you want to cancel sound through open windows, and like the use case is of course for Singapore, because in Singapore we have a dense, housing units are situated really close and they are also close to the roads. So what usually works is like you close the windows and then it blocks off some part of the sound. So the attenuation is like certain dBs. But that leads to rise in air conditioning costs or electricity consumption, right? So the challenge was, could you figure out a more energy efficient way of cancelling noise but still saving some energy? So that was why we have like basically speakers mounted on the window grill that speakers are actuators. So they basically send out anti-noise to the noise coming in so as to cancel, like, let's say, the traffic noise and stuff.
So they're just blocking the noise signals, or are they also recording the sound coming from outside, and then again recreating it?
It's kind of like active noise cancelling.
Yeah.
So it's just cancelling the.
So basically, they do have microphones. So these units, if you look at it, it was shown in some videos, was like it has a microphone to detect the sound pressure coming in, and then basically it has to calculate in real time, which is actually a very small latency,
right?
To send the opposite signal of what is coming in. So it's, if you remember physics, the basic physical concept of superposition, right? It's like it's sending a wave, the same amplitude but opposite phase, right? So it cancels out.
So you're saying like this process, the latency is very low, and therefore it's a very difficult task. But do you see like in the future us getting better processors, better technology, that this becomes irrelevant, for example?
Yeah, totally. I mean, now the same technology is in your headphones, right? So we have ANC headphones which do it very well. It's just that you have to, in a window, you have to cover a lot of area, and so basically you can think about like different speakers must produce the anti-noise at the same time. Otherwise you'll have some noise not being cancelled properly, right? So it's a much bigger system. Of course, as we progress in terms of technology, we may have faster processors. So we of course, that's one way to resolve the problem. But other way is also to make better algorithms.
Right, of course. Do you see like neural networks getting involved in such problems, or are they already involved?
Yeah, I mean, our group also does research on using neural networks to solve such issues, including spatial audio. So I've also used that in the past, and some of our ANC group has also used neural networks, deep neural networks, to basically solve some part of the problem. But of course, when we talk about audio, we have to do everything in real time. So an important consideration is whether these networks can produce output. Maybe they are pre-trained or something which can produce output in real time.
Okay. Interesting.
But I would imagine that the sound cancellation window system, I think it would be challenging to cancel some of the low frequency noises, because usually they travel through like solids, like through the wall and...
Correct, yeah, that's why you need active noise cancellation, because you can only cancel like the wavelength makes a difference. So like in order to cancel a high frequency, you could build like we have noise sound barriers, like also
drilling or something like that.
But in order to cancel low frequency, you need something like active noise cancellation, because you are producing an anti-wave which is cancelling. Because passive is like you need a very thick passive, right,
that's the idea.
to block something. So it's a challenge, but of course that's where the value of ANC is. So usually we have some sort of even in ANC headphones, we have active and passive going together. So you do what we call is like a broadband cancellation till 8 kilohertz or something, and then after 8 kilohertz we have like passive blocking to stop the noise from coming in. So sound frequency of interest also makes a difference. So I mean, for ANC windows, then I think it's mostly like low frequency, and that's another value. So where you can't build barriers of like 3 meter thick, right? Or you can build a system like this which can
Okay, and then of course you're working on a very specific problem, which is like the human. You said human perception, but can this then be extended to general audio products like stage speakers or car speakers or stuff like that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, as I said, anything which can produce a sound pressure level at the 2 ears is a like a game on. Like it's a fair play. Like so be it your car home entertainment, be it state speakers, whatever. It's just a medium, right?
Right.
Of course, the problem slightly changes because, for example, just to give you an example of multiple external speakers, right? So in that case, the headphone, it's a slightly different problem than headphone because now you have crosstalk coming in.
Yes.
So crosstalk is basically the same signal is reaching both ears at different times now.
Yes.
So you have to correct for that in order to deliver like a binaural experience, what we call it. So it's a 2-year experience. Over headphones is slightly easier because like one headphone does not have much leakage in the other ear and vice versa. But in speakers, it might happen.
So I imagine this will also affect the gaming industry enormously, right?
Yeah, totally. So augmented reality, I think, will change a lot of things. I guess social connection would be one. Gaming is definitely one. And navigation. It's the vision is that whatever you do on your phone, you would be doing on this device. So it's the next computing platform, right?
Yeah.
And then, your hands free. You basically have like a sort of a device on your head, which is having these audio cues and visual cues to help you navigate and whatever.
Right.
Yeah, play a game while you are maybe
Driving.
walking or something. Unless don't bump into things, like safety first. Safety first. Not recommending that, but I mean that's the power of these devices, right? So we hope that they can become ubiquitous.
Okay, so let me explore something with you. So because we were discussing this topic before, and we were trying to count the benefits of having an augmented reality on your real environment, right? So, for example, there's a lot of costs that can be saved in the environment, like painting and signs and ads and all that. That all can all go into the virtual side of it. So, what about the sound? So, how can the sound play a role that is as much as a virtual visual aspect, let's say, like because you talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to explore it more.
Sure, I mean, absolutely. So, see, again, the fundamental concept is you need 5 senses, right? You're not using all 5 at the same time, but the more the better. So, a great experience, if you recall any of your great experiences that you have had, is where at least 2 or 3 of your senses are completely engaged, right? You're immersed, like you're involved in so much in the content that you can't think of anything else, right? So what happens in that scenario, if you look at your brain, right? It's what it's doing is it's capturing the information from all these senses and then basically constructing a reality, right? That's why we call it a different reality, like augmented reality, right? If you just talk about vision, you can do that. Certainly we do that now with the mobile phone or something, right? Take it a step further. You build a headset where you have it on. You don't have to hold it on a 2D screen now. You have 3D, right? So that's a game up already.
Yeah.
So you feel immersed. But what you're lacking is again this sense of like awareness. So sound also gives you that. So one aspect is, for example, you're always listening. Like even in this silent room, you can still hear the slight turning on of the AC, the breathing sounds or something, right? And so your sound sense is always on. It's very like your awareness is on a more primal level, like your brain.
It's like breathing.
Your brain is always doing it. Your brain is always doing it and making sense of it. It's just like the vision is sometimes more, overwhelming. So in certain cases, you could use that to your advantage. So for example, how many things can you look in your visual field at a time? But how many can you hear at a time, right? If they're spatially separated, now you could have 5 talkers and you could, in theory, I mean, this is again a problem where you have the cocktail party effect, right? So your brain automatically concentrates on one conversation that you want, right? So, but you could use that to your advantage. You could say, okay, I want to listen to only this and not the other background sound.
So you selectively tune into.
Exactly. That would be very interesting.
Exactly.
Actually, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually, if you're having a conversation in public, you can tune your perception into just that conversation and block everything
Exactly.
else.
Yeah. So the applications are endless. It's that's why my primary focus is to build the tools that people can use later in products or in their daily life, right? Where now you have such powerful experiences and people use them in any way they want.
Okay.
So it's adding this extra layer of emotion. Also, if I can just touch upon one thing, I think this also has the potential for rehabilitation. So rehabilitation in two senses. Rehabilitation for visually impaired. Of course, once you have spatial sound, you could actually use that to direct people to navigate.
Yes.
Right. And another is for hearing impaired. Right. So hearing impaired, there's actually a device which was launched by Bose today, which is an FDA approved hearing aid which does not need an audiologist. Right. And it looks like it's not exactly like a headphone, but it's similar design and similar battery and whatever, right? So Bose designing an FDA approved hearing aid devices. It's not a hearing aid, it's a assistive listening device, but still FDA cleared. So it's incredible because now you don't need to, typically the cost is very high. You need to go to specialized vendors to buy these devices, not very friendly, and the battery life is not that great. A lot of problems. So hopefully these devices can also fill that gap, right? Is my hope.
Interesting. All right. So the last part here, we'd like to talk a little bit about your life as a PhD student, your personal interests, your hobbies, and stuff like that. So you mentioned to us before coming that you're in a swimming session, right?
Yeah.
So.
It's not a session, it's just, I go swimming.
Just like, okay,
Yeah.
so just like an exercise. Okay.
Yeah,
so what else are you into other than swimming?
So I have a cycle, so I cycle around the Kranji, the Kranji farms towards that area. Sometimes when I get the time, I do running. So you'll see a lot of physical outdoor activity happening. I like that. So swimming, cycling, running. Sometimes there's HIIT stuff I also do. So that's exercise. Certainly, I feel like that's a big component of my day or week.
Interesting. And what do you think of the student life on NTU campus? Because I know you live here on campus.
So now I'm also part of the Graduate Student Association. I'm the recreation director. So I guess I think it's pretty good. I've lived in India in the past in a hostel, so more vibrant certainly, more multicultural. You have a lot of different interactions from people of different backgrounds, and that's I think amazing.
Right.
As somebody who is always interested in human perception, it provides a good, even off the lab, right? It provides a good experience to know different kinds of people, learn about their culture and stuff. So that's certainly a plus point. Different foods, certainly.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good
right.
Yeah.
India has given me the opportunity to try different cuisines, and certainly like a lot of different cuisines now. And I guess that relates to the aspect is like I've formed a lot of good friendships with different people from different backgrounds, different communities, and very thankful to this opportunity.
Great. Yeah. And we are thankful for you being here with us.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rishabh.
Thank you, Ahmed, for having me. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christopher.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.